Hey guys, welcome back to Sealess Social Studies. Let me get started. Subscribe to my channel so at least maybe we can talk about social studies all the time because I love it. All right, let's get into today. We're talking about the Southern Colonies. Why do I like the Southern Colonies? Well, I happen to live whoop, 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 in a Southern colony, North Carolina, right? So let's go into the Southern colonies. Well, the things that you have to know about the Southern colonies, a lot of it is opposite of the New England colonies when we talk about geography and we talk about climate, okay? So the other things we're going to talk about is finding the colonies or founding the colonies. One thing you have to know, 1607, the first permanent English settlement is here in Jamestown, Virginia. So let's get started. All right, so why did these guys actually come over here to the New World? Well, first off, right, we're going to have to rewind just a little bit. We're going to go back to about 1585 when Sir Walter Raleigh sends a couple of people, not only about 100 people over here, to go ahead. We want to find this Northwest Passage. There's got to be this Northwest Passage that goes from England all the way to Asia. We're going to find the spice trade. Whoa! Wrong-o. There happens to be a huge continent in between, right? So they land in Dare County, which is in the northern part of North Carolina, and they form like the Roanoke settlement. About 2 years later, a guy named John White comes over here, and they're the more famous of the settlers because of actually what happens to them. Not like they do anything great, but they're called the Lost Colony. After John White actually leaves to go back to England to get more supplies, he comes back here. Let me check my math. I think it's about 1590 he comes back here. And when he comes back here, like all the original settlers are just gone. We have no idea where they went. Did they cannibalize each other? Did they just get up and run away? Did they like interweave themselves with the local native tribes? No idea. The only thing that we know when they came back here was that there was a sign like nailed to a tree and it said Croatoan. That's it. So the Lost Colony. So you fast forward to 1607. New groups of settlers come over here. They land in Jamestown, Virginia. So why do these guys come over here in 1607? Well, the Virginia Company of London sends some guys over here because they hear like the Spanish are getting rich from all these Mesoamerican and Latin American countries. They want gold. They're coming over here to find gold and silver. Hey, let's go over there. So these guys that traveled over here, were they like farmers? Were they architects? Were they carpenters? Were they people who can build things and survive? No, they were rich guys who wanted to get more rich, or they're just sending people over here to go find gold and silver for me. So they come over here. There's no gold and silver to be found. So what do we need to do? Well, lucky for these southern colonists, they were able to start growing a crop that was able to make them lots of money, and that actually wound up being our #1 traded good for like 150 years. Okay, so in 1608, a guy named John Smith, and I know like everybody's like, oh my gosh, John Smith, Disney told me that guy got married to Pocahontas. Wrong. That's not the right John. There's a bunch of Johns out there. John Smith comes over in 1608, and he actually becomes in charge of Jamestown, Virginia, and he like puts this hard law rule into place, and he's like, if you don't work, you don't eat. So Jamestown really kind of started to flourish a little bit, but unfortunately for the Jamestownonians, that's what you call them, John Smith gets hurt. It has like a gunpowder explosion. He gets hurt. He actually has to return to England, never to come back again. But when he was over there, he was like, you guys got to go. That's a great place to go. So 1609 to 1610 is what we call the starving time. Now, what is the starving time? People are starving. It's winter. They don't know what to do. They can't grow crops. They're having all these problems. So actually these guys, and it's like, written down that they actually, some of them turned to cannibalism, eating other people. Not good. So you have this starving time from 1609 to 1610. ultimately it kind of gets out of that. And right around 1613, this guy named John Rolfe, R-O-L-F-E, Rolfe, that's the guy that marries Pocahontas, comes over here and he plants the first successful cultivation of this wonderful trade good that I left you off with before, tobacco. Now, tobacco, in order to make tobacco successful, you have to have a large farm. So when we're talking about the Southern colonies, larger farms, and these large farms are called plantations. But not one guy can farm a whole plantation. So what do? They first bring over these indentured servants. Okay, these people that would have to come over here and work to pay off their travel or their ticket, right? That's what we'll say. They had to come over here and work. It took them about 7 years to pay off their debt of coming here. So these indentured servants. Now, indentured servants kind of wasn't enough. So in 1619 is the first recorded slave ship that comes over to America. And this is the start of the Atlantic slave trade. So you have tobacco, and the tobacco, you can pretty much say, yeah, is a cause of this Atlantic slave trade. Okay, they wanted slaves here in America or here in the colonies to farm their tobacco. So that's Jamestown. Well, what about the other ones? There's 5 in the Southern colonies. You have Maryland, Virginia, Carolina, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. Now let's go through how these, you can't see me, let's go through all these about how they're founded. We already went through Jamestown. So Jamestown becomes the colony of Virginia. In 1634, King Charles sends George Calvert, the Lord Baltimore is what he's called, over here to find or found land, which he founds Maryland as a safe haven for Catholics in America. Mostly all Christians will then wind up in Maryland. So Maryland is founded for a safe haven for Catholics. The king sends over 8 lords proprietors to go ahead and find land called Carolina, King Charles, right? So they send, King Charles sends these 8 lord proprietors over, find Carolina, and Carolina gets founded in 1663, separated into South Carolina in 1729. That becomes a royal colony. But the major port in Carolina, Charlestown, King Charles, right? That's why we name things. Jamestown, King's James, James River. We're not very imaginative. And finally, in 1752, James Oglethorpe founds Georgia. Now, what Georgia was founded for a couple of different reasons. It was founded as a place for debtors. And by debtors, I mean people who owed money to the king. If you owed money to the king, you were thrown in jail. But if you were in jail, how could you pay back the king? Doesn't make sense. So Oglethorpe's like, hey, I'll take these debtors over here to the New World and put them to work, as well as it being a divider between British colony, royal colony, South Carolina, and Spanish Florida. They wanted to have that buffer zone between the two. So that's why all 5 colonies are founded. Okay, so let's go through now our math equation. Oh, math, right? Economy equals geography plus climate. So let's go through here. Now, New England, long, cold winters, short, mild summers. Middle colonies, kind of in between, moderate because some cold, some warm. The South is the opposite of the New England, okay? So what things you have to remember here. In the South, long, hot summers in the South make very fertile soil. So you have these long, warm months to grow these cash crops that you sell for money, like tobacco, rice, indigo, which is like a purple dye. Okay, so in the South, you have long, hot summers, long growing season. Short, mild winters. Sometimes the winters in the South is only a couple days below freezing, depending on what kind of year it is, right? So you have a short, mild winter, a long, hot summer, which is lots of times has lots of moisture dripping down, rain in the sky. So all of the climate leads to these lush growing fields. And remember, these large fields, these large farms, and these large colonies are called plantations. And who was working the plantations? First, indentured servants. Next, it was the slaves. So, climate plus geography of that rich, lush soil equals economy. Tobacco was the #1 trade good out of the colonies for a long time. Tobacco, rice, and indigo, cash crops, crops that are sold for cash. That is the economy of the Southern colonies. So we've covered now the New England, the Middle, the Southern colonies, and we are going to get into the 7 Years' War and then our Revolution.